So we got a Dark Phoenix trailer finally. Guess it's not canceled after all. You can stop leaving me nasty comments now. And it looks fine, I guess. There's a lot of dramatic shots of the X-Men being dramatic, and there's a scene where the Blackbird goes into space, which is keeping in line with the cosmic origins of the source material, but if you ask me, it feels out of place with everything else going on in the trailer. The movie is supposed to be an adaptation of the Dark Phoenix saga, the adaptation that we didn't get with X-Men The Last Stand. Now, the Dark Phoenix saga is probably the most famous and shocking of all the X-Men stories. Will this new version do the comic justice? Well, we won't know for sure until the movie comes out, but I'm gonna put my money on no, because everything this trailer showed me and what we know about this current version of the X-Men movies leads me to believe that it's going to be missing the one element that, to me at least, made the original so worthwhile. So, spoiler alert for an almost 40-year-old X-Men story. I know that might sound absurd, but believe it or not, there are some people who haven't read the most famous X-Men story around. The Dark Phoenix saga occurred in the pages of Uncanny X-Men issues 129 to 138. It was written by Chris Claremont and penciled and co-plotted by John Byrne. The story is all about Jean Grey succumbing to the cosmic energy inside her and becoming the Dark Phoenix, a malevolent being that causes death and destruction everywhere she goes. Now, that is an oversimplification, but the bottom line is an X-Man goes very, very bad, and it's up to the team to not only save Jean, but stop the Phoenix Force that's raging inside of her, even if that means having to kill their friend. It's a well-remembered story that still holds up to this day. Back in the 80s when it first came out, it was very shocking to see a good guy turn so evil so dramatically. And her ultimate sacrifice at the end of the story just wasn't something you saw in mainstream superhero comics at the time. Even today, this is a very harrowing and heartbreaking read. I pretty much agree with everybody who says that the Dark Phoenix saga is one of the best X-Men stories around. Hell, one of the best comics around. The story has been adapted into other media before. It was of course part of the classic 1992 X-Men the Animated Series. It was a part of the 2000 series Wolverine and the X-Men, which was pretty good from what I remember of it. It was going to be a part of X-Men Evolution, but that series got canceled before they can follow up on the story threads they were building. And of course, it was infamously a part of X-Men The Last Stand. Having been set up beautifully in X2, the Phoenix story became second fiddle to the main story of X-Men 3 The Last Stand, the Mutant Cure story. And a story like the Dark Phoenix saga isn't the type of story that can be easily combined with another. It's the type of story that needs room to breathe to really showcase the sorrow and heartbreak and horror of seeing a friend turn evil. And it does look like they're finally doing that with this new Dark Phoenix movie, having the movie be all about the Dark Phoenix, but I don't think they're going about it in the way that they should. Let me see if I can explain. See, Jean Grey became the Phoenix in issue 101 of Uncanny X-Men. That story would retroactively be known as the Phoenix Saga and happened 4 years before the start of the Dark Phoenix Saga. Do you see what they did there? She became the Phoenix by merging with an entity that would later be known as the Phoenix Force. Now, the fact that Jean Grey and the Phoenix Force are two separate things isn't necessarily what's important to the story. It's how she goes from Phoenix to Dark Phoenix that is. See, in the 4 years between the Phoenix Saga and the Dark Phoenix Saga, not much attention is paid to the changes to Jean Grey. Sure, it's acknowledged that she's a little bit more powerful and quite a bit sexier, but overall, nothing really seems out of place to anybody on the team. For the most part, she was just regular old Jean Grey. It wasn't until a run-in with the Hellfire Club where Jean's evil side started to show. The kickoff to the Dark Phoenix storyline is Jean Grey getting mind-controlled by Mastermind, Jason Wingard. He brainwashes her into becoming the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. Under Mastermind's control, Jean becomes very evil, and her newfound sexiness is much more in your face. She helps the Hellfire Club kidnap and torture the X-Men. She even makes Cyclops fight Mastermind to the death. Granted, it's all in Cyclops' head, but still. But it's also because of Mastermind's control that the final mental barrier between Jean and the Phoenix Force is broken, allowing the cosmic being to completely take control of Jean and have her become more dangerous and scary than ever before. I mean, she wipes out an entire solar system, killing every living being on the planet of the Bari. What's more dangerous and scary than that? Now let me be clear, I am not saying that the filmmakers should follow the comic 100%. I'm perfectly okay with them making changes where necessary. Like, I'm actually okay with the Phoenix Force not being this grand threatening cosmic entity. The space stuff is cool and all, but to me, that's not the most important part of this story. So let's talk about the X-Men films, and for now, let's ignore the original X-Men films. I only want to talk about the current ones, the ones where Sophie Turner is Jean Grey, so Dark Phoenix and Apocalypse. In X-Men Apocalypse, it's shown pretty early on that Jean has this mysterious power inside of her, one that's very dangerous and could potentially hurt a lot of people. Now, anybody with even passing knowledge of the X-Men would take one look at that scene and think, Phoenix. And then at the end of the movie, we see Jean unleash the Phoenix. No surprise there. Now, sure, we the audience know going into this that Jean Grey is going to become the Dark Phoenix at some point. It's kind of like how we knew Emma Stone was not going to survive all of the Amazing Spider-Man films. She was going to die at some point. But that doesn't mean that the characters that are in the movie should know about it beforehand. To me, one of the biggest and best elements of the Dark Phoenix saga was that Jean Grey's turn into Dark Phoenix happened seemingly out of nowhere. Yes, she had been regular Phoenix for a while now, but like I said, she wasn't exhibiting any signs of turning evil. Any hint that something might have been wrong in the comic book storyline was retconned in after the fact. The incident with the Hellfire Club did turn Jean evil, but that was assumed to only be temporary by both the X-Men and the audience. It was assumed that everything was in the clear when all of a sudden Jean becomes the Dark Phoenix and everything really goes to hell. It's that shock that makes the Dark Phoenix saga so memorable. So by having other characters see her potential to lose control of her powers so early on, it changes the basic idea of the Phoenix story. They clearly see that something is wrong with her, and if they were real friends, they would try and do everything they can to help her solve this problem. Now, you may be thinking, well, Professor X is trying to help Jean, but is failing to, and that may be true, at least according from the trailer, but that leads to another problem. Professor X, knowing beforehand about Jean's Phoenix issue, trying and failing to solve it on his own, and not telling the rest of the team about it, changes the Phoenix saga from the story of a team trying to save their corrupted friend into the story of a team trying to save their corrupted friend while also trying to fix the mess that Professor X created. And that's just not the Dark Phoenix saga. The unexpected heel turn of Jean Grey is the real Dark Phoenix saga. Everything else is really just secondary, if you ask me. To be clear, I am not saying that Jean should just become evil out of nowhere. Obviously, it would make sense to drop little hints and clues that Jean's gonna turn into the Dark Phoenix. That just makes sense from a storytelling perspective. Kind of like in X2 when Jean has that power spasm in the museum at the beginning of the movie, and Cyclops is concerned about it but not really sure what's going on. Something like that I think would be perfect for telling the Dark Phoenix story. But from what we saw in Apocalypse, and judging from the looks of the Dark Phoenix trailer, it doesn't look like that's gonna be the case. It looks like Professor X is gonna have pre-existing knowledge of Jean's Phoenix issue. Hell, the trailer for Dark Phoenix makes it look like it's going to be just as much Professor X's burden as it is Jean Grey's, maybe even more so Professor X's burden. Now, if you think I'm being unfair because I haven't seen the movie yet and therefore don't know the story that they're trying to tell, sure, that's true, but again, they showed Jean going full Phoenix in X-Men Apocalypse, and the team was there to see that happen. They know she has this ability. And Dark Phoenix is supposed to take place 10 years after X-Men Apocalypse. So in that time frame, they should have found a way to help Jean with her problem. But that's not the movie we're getting. At least this will be the last of the Fox-made X-Men films. Maybe when Disney finally takes control of this franchise and gives it to Kevin Feige, he'll find something new and creative to do rather than just try to retell Jean becoming the Firebird again. Who knows? But what did you think about the Dark Phoenix trailer? Do you think the movie will do the comic book justice, or do you think it's going to be missing all the important elements that made the source material great? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. If you want to read the Dark Phoenix saga before the movie comes out, I put Amazon affiliate links in the description below to several different ways the story was collected over the years. There is, of course, the trade paperback, just like I have. There's a digital version, you can read it on Comixology or your Kindle. And I also put a link to the omnibus version of the Dark Phoenix saga. That includes the Dark Phoenix saga and the original Phoenix saga. Marvel often doesn't bundle both stories together in one complete package, so if you want to read everything, that might be your best bet. I mean, they did just delay Dark Phoenix again only a few days after the trailer actually came out, so you got plenty of time to read the source material before this thing ever sees the light of day. If it ever does at this point, let's be real. Of course, don't forget about Wulff Den Apparel. Don't forget that we have new videos every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday with the return of the backlog. And as always, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern is Wulff Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share with a friend who saw the Dark Phoenix trailer and doesn't really know why they're feeling uneasy about it. Maybe this video will remind them that surprise is the biggest element of the original story. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.